I've used 200 euros in a week on OpenClaw. Yeah, the Claude API is not cheap. Check out Minimax. It's not as good. I've mentioned them a few times, but Minimax have MaxClaw. So it works directly with OpenClaw. It's a Chinese model. It is a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper than using the Claude API. It is not as good, but for the majority of tasks, that doesn't really matter, especially if you spec those tasks really well up front. If you've got strict enough and solid enough instructions, then you don't need to be using an Opus 4.7 inside of OpenClaw. So you use the high-end model to work out what your OpenClaw is going to be doing, and then you're going to use a lower-end model to actually do the implementation, and then you're not going to be spending thousands a month on your API costs. It's all getting very expensive. There's no way around that. You say, oh, you're getting Qwen 7b. Cool, Qwen is good too. So this is what the Chinese models are fantastic for, you can use the state-of-the-art models, the American closed source models for planning, architectural, working things out, and then you hand over the actual implementation of the work to the Chinese models. They're perfectly good. The going estimate is that the Chinese model is around 6 months behind. It's fine. For the most part, you're just using a slightly older model, but you're using it on simpler tasks, which is absolutely fine. Could I vibe code an app in Claude Code but use other LM's API when shipping? Yes, 100%. Claude Code is for building. The app that you build could be an AI app, and if it is, you need to connect it to some APIs, or it could just be a non-AI app. Claude Code is an AI builder which can build anything, including AI apps. It's a bit like Squarespace is a website for building websites. When you build Claude Code, you can say to it, hey, I'm building this application. It's going to be an iPhone app, and it's going to hook into Minimax or Qwen. So I need to set up the API for that, and it will build around those requirements. You do not need to use the Claude API in products that you build using Claude Code. I would recommend not using Claude under the hood of most applications, because for most things, it is overkill. It's very good, but you're going to end up with high costs for running your application. So for me personally, on this site, for example, I've got a bunch of AI tools, stuff like this, AI business quiz. I built this using Claude Code, but the AI that runs it every time somebody comes to it and uses it is GPT 5.3 or 5.4. So it uses GPT under the hood because that is perfectly fine for what it needs to do. You test with different models and you find which one works best for you, but you use Claude Code to do the actual building. What are your thoughts on Docker and trying to do the same thing on your own computer? I use Docker, but trying to do your own model on a computer, you can run a local model. Things like Minimax are fantastic. They are not as good as Opus 4.7. They're not as good as the state-of-the-art models from the Frontier Labs. You can get more usage if you have a beefy computer. Now, obviously, you need to invest in buying a computer, and then you need to spend money on the electricity. I think local models are great, but will become increasingly less relevant. Reason being that the models get bigger and bigger, requiring beefier hardware to get them working, and hardware costs are skyrocketing. So it was GPUs initially, like buying a 590 costs a fortune. Now it's the RAM as well. So running a local model is going to become more expensive over time, which is a problem, but the model is going to continue getting bigger. Now, obviously, if we get better quantization, if we get better compression, basically, of the models, then we can allay that. But I think the trend overall is going to make it difficult for local models to remain relevant. People come and bite my head off for that, though. The people who love local models. I love local models too. I just think it's going to be tricky. So you could have 4.7 as Stratch, Oversight, and 4.6 Agent doing context management. Yep, 100%. It would be interesting to see what 4.6 limits are like moving forward, because they have been a problem over the last few weeks. Maybe this is the positive spin on 4.7. Maybe 4.7 comes out and suddenly the limits on 4.6 are a lot more generous, but it's still using the same amount of tokens. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. And there's this conspiracy theory, speculation, perhaps right, that 4.6 has been dumbed down over the last few weeks whilst increasing the limits. And then 4.7 is just a way to patch that over and say, there's an even better model, basically giving us the original 4.6 in a new coat of paint and saying that it's smarter. I don't know. I noticed that many people use the same session for way too long. Context rot is a real problem with using models nowadays. It's not helped by the fact that the models are getting larger and larger contexts. Opus, for example, has a 1 million context. So people think because it has 1 million contexts, I'm just going to keep using it because I can. They gave me a 1 million, so I'm just going to keep using it. The problem with that is that then you'll tend to continue to do different tasks in the same context window, and you start to get context rot. It will start to forget things from earlier on. It won't be able to manage as much of the context at the same time. This might be an even larger problem with 4.7 because the MRCR is suggesting it is not as good at working over large contexts as 4.6. So it's still better. Best practice is to start new chats for new tasks. If they're unrelated, absolutely start a new chat. But the fact that they've given us these larger windows makes a lot of people think that we should use the larger window, which is not always the case. Oh yeah, increasing context windows and token usage. Yeah, exactly that. Okay, Can't Stop Me Now says, I've been going on 4.7 for the last 3 hours and I'm at 18%. 18% of the day or 18% of the week? Big difference. But that's promising because some people were using 4.6 and then immediately just hit a limit for the day within 5-10 minutes. So the fact you've been using it for hours is promising. Remember though, they've temporarily increased our limits this week in order to kind of segue us into the new model. Or just use Stop Slop. What's that? I don't know Stop Slop. An AI, oh, okay. A skill for removing AI tells from prose. So getting rid of the M dashes. Oh, I didn't know about this. This is really cool. So somebody in chat has just pointed out a skill called Stop Slop, which looks really cool. Basically, it's a skill that you plug directly into your Claude, which is going to remove AI tells from your writing. I personally use a really useful Wikipedia article, which is the signs of AI writing, but I bring that into my projects and say, hey, don't do any of this. But it looks like somebody has built a skill around this, which includes things like throat clearing openers, emphasize crutches, business jargon, adverbs, all adverbs, vague declaratives, meta-commentary. Probably, here we go, no M dashes, no staccato fragmentation, no lazy extremes, only using active voice rather than passive. Very, very, very cool. I will check this out. Thank you. So it's called Stop Slop by a guy called Hardik Pandya. Very cool. Oh, it has 3,000 stars, so it must be decent. Tech, vibe coding an app. It would be the first steps of vibe coding or agentic engineering an app, where you are working out what modules you actually need and what the overall structure is going to be looking like, rather than the actual implementation of it. So if you're building something large, I will start in Claude. So I won't be in Claude Code, I'll work in Claude, work out a project brief, work out a spec, and then move it over into Claude Code. What specifically? For language transcription, it depends what you're doing. Do you want local or do you want state-of-the-art? Gemma is apparently very good at this. The new Gemma 4 in audio understanding. I have not tested it fully, but I've heard good things about Gemma 4 for language transcription in particular. And because it's local, really useful depending on your usage. But if you're building a device, for example, for transcription and recording, Gemma would be the one to go for. If you want to provide people with an in-app transcription of their language, then Gemma can load onto their app as well because it's so lightweight. So I would check that out. But it depends what you're trying to do. Replicant says, I used Gemma 427B for taxes. How did that go? I guess we'll find out when the tax authority gets back to you. I'm sure it's fine. Gemma 4 is solid. Depends how complex your taxes are. I do worry for bookkeepers and people who prepare taxes because AIs are getting very good at this kind of stuff. I hope I don't get audited. You can't blame it on Gemma 4 either. That's the great thing about using an accountant or using a lawyer is they can be held legally responsible. So if they mess up, if they did your accounts wrong, the accountant, then some of the blame comes back on them. With AI, it can't be held legally responsible because it's not a person. So this is why some professions are safe for now because of legal liability.